Hello everyone, this is John Starrett with Procure SQL. And in this tip, we're going to go over a unique feature with statistics behind your indexes here to where you can actually persist a sample percent that will always be locked in, except in cases where it doesn't get locked in. And that's exactly what we're going to go over in this tip here. We've preloaded a test table with 100 million rows, and now we have this stored procedure that's really just here to kind of simplify the process of showing us the data behind our statistics here. So we're going to go ahead and run that. So the very first thing we're going to do with this one column table here is we're going to rebuild the primary key index. So anytime you rebuild an index, what this is going to end up doing is it's going to do a full sample of 100% here. So we're going to go ahead and run this here. All right, our index rebuild finished, and now I'm going to show you the old school way of how you can look at your statistics with DBCC show statistics here. So what we're going to see when we run this is, if I zoom in here, we're going to see here that we actually used 100% of our rows here. So that's how you know it's a full scan there. Now I'm going to simplify this going forward using my code here that I have in our stored procedure, but the first time I just wanted to show this to you, and again, just showing here, simplifying the fact that we can easily get our sample percent. So what this means is every single row of data was used to build the histogram that will be used to help the optimizer build the best execution plan for you. So the next thing we are going to do here is we're going to update stats, but this time we're going to use this pretty cool feature called Persist sample percent. And what this is going to do is this is going to lock in a sample rate for us, which is going to be 60%. So we're going to use 60% of the data here to build out that histogram for stats here. So we're going to go ahead and run this. All right, so here we can see that our result set here finished, and we can see that we have our 60% here. So here we have about our 60% here, and we can see that there's the actual row sample that end up used. So the key thing to note here is by adding persist sample percent on, what this should do to benefit you is lock in this sample rate, so if ever auto stats gets triggered, it's going to know that, hey, we want to do this at 60%. In theory, that's what makes this feature really, really good. So once again, if we go through and we just do a regular update stats here, so notice that we do not have a percent specified. It's going to re-pick up and reuse that persisted sample percent here. So this is the same as what you would expect with doing auto stats triggering the update here. All right, and just as we expected here, because we had our persisted sample percent locked in, even though we didn't specify our sample percent like we did up here, we're still using it because it is baked in. So your benefit here is anytime your stats, auto update stats would trigger, or someone else would run an update stat here, it would actually use the persisted sample percent and build the statistics based off of that percentage value that we specified previously over here. So everything's really, really cool here, because as your data gets bigger, the sample percentage would go down to be smaller if you didn't lock in a percentage here. All right, now the next question here is, what will actually happen when we rebuild the index, right? We locked in 60%, but we know every single time we rebuild an index, it does a full scan. So let's go ahead and execute this and see how things change. For example, I would expect us to have 100% full scan here for the update here. Let's see if that happens and if anything else might change as well when we go ahead and rebuild this index. All right, so our index rebuild completed. Let's go take a look at our results. So as expected here, you can see that we have our sample rate is 100%, But there's one thing here you might not initially notice that's very important to understand. When we actually went through the process of rebuilding our index, the rebuild index actually wipes out the persisted sample percent. So as before, where we would lock this in at 60%, any future stats update to this index now no longer has a persisted sample percent there. And you might be wondering, well, why is this key? Why is this important? Well, let's go ahead now and see, because we're going to go through the process of simulating another stats update after we updated that index with the index rebuild. Let's go ahead and look at the sample percent used now. All right, so now that you can see, as we learned before here, because we did our index rebuild, we lost our persisted sample percent. The key takeaway here is the bigger your table, the smaller percent of data will actually be used here when you do stats updates. So this is a key thing to notice here, as we expected 60% of our table to be used to build the histogram that would be used to build our execution plans going forward. Here we only have 1%, and as your data gets bigger, the percentage will actually get smaller and smaller. So what can you do here? The one call to action I have for you for watching this video is to please go out to Microsoft's feedback, azure.com website here, and vote here for this feature request here that I'll include in the video links below. Hopefully this will get some attention to where they can go through and lock this in, so that way when we actually persist our sample size for updating stats, it stays in there throughout any index rebuilds. So once again, this is John Sterrett. I hope you found this tip helpful, and we look forward to seeing you at the next one. Thank you.